Sana.
Nashukuru.
Sisi pia tunashukuru sana. Thank you so much for being here this morning. If you're tuned in this morning on our live streams on YouTube, Facebook, and on X, we're also on KTN this morning. So thank you so much for being here. Kenya's biggest conversation. You know what they were saying yesterday is that Kioni.
Yes, we had told our listeners and our viewers that you are coming. Yes, and they knew, and so when they didn't see you, that was their contribution.
But now that you're here, we can't say that because it doesn't sound as sweet. But look, either way,
we have better news.
Tunaona Kioni.
Ladies.
Yeah.
Front page.
Kenya's bold newspaper talking about this, the two heroines of Kenya today.
These are the heroes and heroines.
Well, let's welcome you to the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. CT is in a different African country. As you know, he does, hop about. And this week, he'll tell us where we are and what today's proverb is. And then, SG, you can interpret that for us.
Okay.
We are in the Gabonese Republic, one of the richest countries on this continent, ruled by one family for 56 years. Omar Bongo, then his son Ali, until 2023, when there was a change of guard. Okay. This
for
country...
26 years.
56
years.
Yes, 56.
Oh, my God.
I think they got to a point where they thought it was a monarchy, where they would just sort of like pass it on from father to son. And the Gabonese people said, no, that I don't think is going to be the case. But it represents the tragedy of this continent. That a country that was once even referred to loosely as the Kuwait of Africa, there was such opulence, and it was contrasted with dire poverty.
Yes.
By some members of the community. It is tragic. They had oil wealth among the wealth they had, and somehow it didn't trickle down to the people who need it most. That's why I said it represents the tragedy of this wonderful continent of ours.
True.
That's supposed to be housed to just about the bulk of the wealth on this planet. The proverb: a fool looks for dung where the cow never browsed.
So you're like looking for good governance where there was never going to be one.
Something of that sort, yes. Yeah. Something of that sort, yes.
You're almost certain you're not going to get it there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we keep looking for things that are... I think it is like what is happening in this country. We are expecting something from perhaps a system that from the beginning never intended to deliver anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you become a fool. It's only wise that we move on.
Okay.
Yes.
And
And,
so that's loaded.
talking of Gabon and that history you've given us, it's not difficult for any African country to get to that level. And when people, you see, you can easily do 56 years with one chain of people when you give up on voting.
You do.
You give up on elections. But we have one of the reasons why we had to say 2 5-year terms for any president, so that come what may.
It's only 2 terms.
It's
Yes,
just
it's
2
only
terms,
2
no matter
terms.
what you do.
And yet we've seen situations where in this country there are people who have attempted to tinker with those 5 years.
Yes, and it is
Attempted.
Catastrophic.
it is the worst thing that one can think of. Even in contemplating, I think we should have had that as an offense. Remember, there was an offense.
If you contemplate the death of a president,
Now,
yes.
contemplating changing the term of a president should be
treasonous.
something that is next to treasonous.
Well, one might also argue that to not have a vibrant and vigilant opposition could also be something that's an offense to Kenyans, whereby there wouldn't be anybody in place to seriously check on the excesses of government or to seriously check on the behavior of government. And we've been dilly-dallying, or we've just been kind of playing, pussyfooting around this issue of an opposition for the last 2.5 years properly. Many could argue that even some years before that in terms of the strength of the virulence of an opposition, that has been watered down significantly. And so those are some of the conversations that we have this morning with you here. And we've always been saying an opposition. Okay. Is there a problem with two folks coming together and joining and saying, let's form government, without anybody standing in a place where they're checking on what is being done or really fighting for the position of the people?
Our constitution, the constitution that we gave ourselves 2010, will not be implementable if we continue this route. For the government, for the systems to function, all institutions must be in place and they must be strong. When we say that we are going to have a presidential system, there was provided under the same constitution the provision for the minority. And the work of the minority is to keep the majority in check. Why? Because like our good historian is telling us, it is not lost to any of us that if a government is in power or a team of people are in power and there is no vibrant check, they will get excessive. They will go beyond what was allowed of them or for them. You will see them wanting to even amend the constitution. You see them borrowing without anybody asking a question. You see the kind of withdrawal of money from treasury in cash from the consolidated fund without following the procedures that were provided for in the constitution. So the work of the opposition is to ensure that those who are ruling us or governing us at any given time are kept in check, and you must keep poking holes in everything that they do. Sometimes to a point where you are almost an irritant. But that is what will help the country move on. You will, so anybody wanting to weaken the opposition is a person who is really, just like we have said, is a person committing treason to us and to our future generation. I remember when we had elections, the first time we had elections under this constitution, which was 2013. And before the swearing in at Kasarani, those who had been given the mandate to run the government, the TNA team led by Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, and there were those who were in the minority, and there were sittings that started happening. Those who were in smaller parties because there were no pre-election agreements and the rest. They started moving and looking for the president-elect to see whether they can get into pacts, get into some arrangements. And that time, I don't know whether it is the best thing that should have happened, but at that time, I remember the international community called in and asked the president-elect, is it your desire to collapse the opposition? That was before even the governments were formed. They were allowed to protect the opposition in whichever format it came in. And it is because without opposition, many governments will not be able to deliver. I almost say almost none of the governments will ever be able to deliver. But then we come to 2017, and I remember him issuing a statement. He released a press statement and said he does not desire to swallow any opposition party or to bring on board any opposition party. But he wanted to get into some understanding into how are we going to function. We are now under a new constitution. What does this mean? You in the opposition, us in government. What does that mean?
Right.
I don't quite remember. I can't quite tell exactly how it went. It was, but I can be able to move on to 2017 and say there we come and we now see the handshake.
Yeah.
And now again we have another something broader that has been put in place. And I think it is very, very important for, it's a little worrying to see that the doyen of opposition, the man who we credit a lot with the coming into effect of our 2010 constitution, can now easily be accused of being the one who has completely undermined our constitution.
Kioni, as we talk about opposition formation in this country, let's look at the constitution. Does not envisage the official opposition, but we talk in terms of majority, minority, which has been the minority checks the excesses of the majority. But you come to 2022 and the government in place has the minority in the house. Majority, even the courts declared the other day, belonged to what would have formed the opposition. But that notwithstanding, we also go back into the formations that are put in place, the NADCO report, which you are party to, and with that has seen the implementation of an official opposition, which should be put in place. And here we are, two individuals have come together, they've shook hands, broad-based government, and they want the same report that you are party to be implemented. How then is it that when you are pushing for that office to be there, it was okay, but now it is wrong?
One is I don't know whether I want to go into. Let me say the constitution provides for the minority and majority, and it is the Kenyans to decide who belongs to the majority on the floor of the house and who belongs to the minority, and also who occupies the offices of at Harambee House or State House or the executive, and that is the constitution that we give to ourselves. And clearly, that was the first attack to our constitution, because Kenyans decided the majority on the floor will be Azimio, minority will be UDA. State House, we are giving it to UDA. But you could see the onslaught on the political parties by KK, even members of parliament outside of the discipline of political parties, which is what we are calling under NADCO, fidelity to multi-party democracy. And we said, even before we are able to move on anything, one of the things we must do is, can we have some hygiene? Can we exercise, can we see some fidelity when you are dealing with political parties? And this was the reality that you cannot mix them up and then end up with what the constitution wanted us to get. There will not be that balance and check. If you talk about NADCO, you may need to go through the Hansard and see what I kept saying from day one until even the day of signing. And I kept saying this NADCO thing is also poorly conceived. And if you remember, and I think I saw Mother complain about it yesterday somewhere, if I'm not wrong. Those of us who form Azimio, majority is ODM. Or the largest political party in terms of numbers on the floor,
yes,
is ODM. Jubilee, number 2. Wiper, 3. Number 4 is DAPK. But when it came to constituting the panel in the NADCO, it was ODM, Wiper, and DAPK. And we asked Raila, how is it that you skip Jubilee? Is it because the person around here is from the mountain or something? And there wasn't. I asked the same to Karonzo, and also asked the same to Wamarwa. How do you feel sitting on a seat that
belongs to you,
doesn't belong to you?
Yeah.
And I can tell you that was my second, clarity. An issue, an incident that could tell me that even in Azimio, hata kama tunasema inawezekana, kuna mengine haiwezekani.
Yeah.
And, but again, we choose to keep the institution going, the coalition going. We did see the reason to break it up. Mother was quite unhappy. She wasn't asking to sit in, but she was saying this is not what we went loud telling people. She decided to, is at that point, or slightly later, that is at that point she said, I don't think I have any value in this coalition thing if we can't agree on this kind of a small thing. And she started her exit from that point. NADCO report, I kept saying, not because I was not seated in it, but I kept saying that if we don't anchor it properly, before the NADCO committee, remember there was another committee in Parliament.
Yes.
I don't know what you are calling it. Darong something.
Yes, there was a national
Parliamentary
dialogue. So
something.
there was something.
Yes, that couldn't move because of dishonesty on the part of KK.
That's why NADCO came up.
So NADCO was a little after, but also after quite some bit of
Back and forth.
na kusukuma na kwa barabara.
Yes.
Tear gas na marisasi. So when we now sit and say NADCO, one, you say the first thing that we want to see, cost of living. Can we agree that before anything else, can you put on the table the policies that you are implementing to address the cost of living? And they agreed on that when we were discussing the NADCO formation. But when we came to sitting, they then said, cost of living is the work of the executive. Remove it from the agenda.
So essentially, they started shifting goalposts from day one.
Immediately. The second one we said is, we want compensation of those who had already. Remember, this was after the Azimio Maandamano. We want compensation of those who had been killed. And you know, the killing, I don't know how quickly we forget as Kenyans. The kind of killings that were occasioned on those young people and families was horrific. You know, removing people from the houses. They were not in demonstrations. Way after the demonstrations, you follow people and beat them up and even keep them from their own houses. Again, that was washed around. I think you also saw it may be forming the 10-point agenda. I think that
it's one of those exactly that talks
so
about
again,
reserving the right
playing around with people's minds. Why is it that we haven't seen a process? We say police officers must be brought to account. Any person who fired a bullet. We have laws in this country. You are supposed to be held to accountable. And if you are orders from above, let us know who is this who gave you those orders. And we pushed enough. Until the former alikuwa anaitwa Kome.
It was called Kome.
I think. I don't know exactly why he left, but I think he resigned because he could not be able to explain who was giving those orders, because clearly quite a number of the orders that were issued were not from him. You could see a dysfunctional. So Kome may have left, but Kome was not the one who was firing at us. It's not the one who crowbarred. If he's the one who gave instructions, we wanted the police officers held to account. So that is yet another of the things that needed to be done before we even sit to negotiate, because those were not issues.
Those are non-negotiables.
The other one was fidelity to multi-party democracy. Why are you sitting on Jubilee's instrument? Why are you fishing from within Parliament by enticing members of Parliament and getting them to do
to
what
decamp and move to your side.
Really, just be unavailable to the majority side by having unnecessary inducements and allowing them to sit in your meetings. That again did not require any law to have been passed. Those are things that should have been done, but none of them was done. So for me, from day one, NADCO was a document that was used and for purposes of personal preservation.
Yeah,
it was to preserve the
status quo.
And William was able to keep us there for almost almost a year.
Yeah. 8 to 9 months. So then if you go off of that, SG.
And then also the person who was negotiating NADCO, Baba, we kept asking him, we seem to be lost on this. You seem to have given in. At the point at which I said, let's walk away from this thing. He's the one who said, no, you get something out of it. Our leader then, of course, the very diplomatic former vice president, also wanted to come out with something. But it was not, for some of us, it was not something, at the expense of everything else. I did not see the value of NADCO. Then again, I was made the head of the secretariat, but I must commend the people who were in the secretariat in the name of Professor Adam Zolo and we also had Lynn Gugi, we had Zain Mohammed, very, very resourceful individuals. But this is the thing. and we also put it there. If you're talking about amendment to the constitution, creating the offices that you have talked about, the leader of opposition, the position of the prime minister, they are good for this country. But what does that mean? It's a change of the governance structure. We move from presidential to parliamentary. And if that is to happen, a referendum.
Must
And
constitutionally,
referendum
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and if referendum must happen, the constitution lays the steps that needs to be followed. And if we don't even need to read the constitution, look at what was said and done with BBI.
Yes.
So we can go back and redo the whole thing. So there are quite a number of proposals in the NADCO report. There was also the issue of IBC, and ahead of even the other issues was open the server. So all these things, mpaka tukafaa sufuria, trying to goga ndio watu amke.
Right.
I think
So-
it is time to goga it again for now the people in the pact.
Azimio as a
But,
coalition, Azimio as a coalition was formed with many parties, of course, participating in this coalition. Eugene Wamalwa the other day with this, MOU that was then signed between ODM and UDA, essentially between Raila Odinga and President William Ruto. Eugene Wamalwa suggested that this was the final nail in the coffin for Azimio as a coalition. Is Azimio dead? And if so, the remaining generals who are picking themselves up from this war, you being one of them, Kalonzo Musyoka, who's now joined or seemingly to join former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, or whatever is going on there. Where is the space for an opposition? Or is everybody saying, no, I'm not going to take on the position of opposition because come 2027, I'm a rightful contender for this particular race. So where is it? It seems all pretty ambiguous at this moment.
And now that I mentioned the server, and I say that it does not require any law, and now that they are together, if nothing else comes out of it, I think they should just agree to open the server, because none is fighting the other. Si wafugue kitu tuiangalie sisi wote. And as they open the server, remember Baba also maintained that the 2013 elections were leaked. 2017 elections were leaked. 2007 elections were leaked. I am a Kenyan who want to know what were the true numbers
Of all those elections.
so that we can learn from them. Those who leaked, sawa tuachane na maneno yao, but how do you ensure that
It won't happen again?
if they have no intentions of rigging 2027, let them open all those servers from 2007.
Okay.
We want to know what were the actual numbers there. And
Okay.
I say this for two reasons. There are people who downplay numbers, there are others who overplay numbers. Can we get to know the actual numbers in this country?
All
and
right.
I tell you, they are fearful of the numbers. The two of them, they are fearful of the numbers as they are in those servers.
So what happens to
Kwa sababu,
Azimio?
there is nothing.
I need you
going
to...
back. I'm coming to Azimio.
So what you're saying essentially is that the numbers would have been the numbers would have been in his favor as the one who won the election.
Yes. And if they open 2017, 2013, he is likely to have realized that us remaining together in Azimio, he was on the right side. And now, even worse still, or better still, Kenyans are really where we were trying to get them to be during the Maandamano. Kenyans decamped from every person who was in support of the executive has left. And in the people's minds, the issue of this system, you remember, you know what this young man, I call him young because he's younger than any other than Huyu, Edwin Sifuna. Edwin Sifuna said something, I think he was in another station somewhere, and he said, even if Baba was to swallow Ruto, there is no way Ruto will win elections 2027. So, and you can listen to many of the things that have been said by these young registrators within ODM whom I admire, because they are talking the truth to Baba in a very respectful manner, which is what those members of Jubilee failed to do. Because they should have talked to Uhuru in a very respectful manner, and brought what they believed in. That's how you mature and you become a national leader. But you don't insult those who are, in the manner that they insulted Uhuru. You see, Gachagua is still struggling with that kind of baggage, and it is something that you cannot remove.
You cannot offload easily.
And I really
for a long time
sympathize with him.
Why?
He's really struggling to get that thing off his back, and it's not an easy thing. Matusi kwa wazee kwa Kiafrika haisaidii. So on the issue of Omaru, I hope I've answered why Baba would have realized why he is on the wrong side after that deal. Azimio, we signed an agreement that was deposited with the registrar of political parties.
Yeah.
It was also deposited with the Speaker of the National Assembly. And it is available for any other person who would want a copy. And there is a way of joining and a way of exiting. The fact that Wamarua, Mother, Raila, if you ask me, ODM now have also exited. Doesn't mean...
Has ODM exited Azimio?
Let me just finish before you come to that. It doesn't mean that that's the end of the agreement. We in Jubilee signed that agreement, and we are in Azimio to date.
Yes.
And we will remain in Azimio until we get into another coalition agreement when that time comes.
Who's left in Azimio?
Jeremiah Kioni and the Jubilee Party.
So just the parties left in the coalition?
No, we had 23 political parties.
So the rest of them are there? One?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when a few of them, the fact that the largest political party, ODM, seems to have, playing ping pong, but ideally, they have left, if you ask me.
Jeremiah,
but before that, let me just finish
You are the lawyer, but please go on.
Before, so that I don't agree with Wamarua.
You don't agree with
No,
him?
I don't.
Okay.
That's not the head of Azimio. I know they are already in a coalition formation agreement. Yes. So technically, those who are left in Azimio will take over the leadership of Azimio. And Jubilee Party should step in, and we will step in to take over the leadership of that opposition side.
Okay.
But that also does not mean that is just the opposition. The good thing about where we are today, the beauty about it, Kenyans are in the opposition. Kenyans are in the opposition. And the people who are now being scrutinized more are those in the opposition, because that is where hope
actually rests. Let's take a break on that
and
point.
we need to up our game. Those
and
of
I want
us
to,
in the opposition.
double click on this issue of, Kenyans actually being the ones in the opposition now. And we've talked about the fact that formations of government need not follow a particular path that has been charted by others, or what has been written down in the history books by others, that you can work out your governance structures. You can. So maybe this is a way where Kenyans are going and saying, you know what, we are going to be the ones who are going to keep governments in check, because any day you can now decide you're going to form and join yourselves at the behest of Kenyans. But we'll come back and we'll continue with that. Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, joins us this morning, and we continue that conversation when we come back. We'll take a quick look at weather and traffic at 24 minutes to 9. We'll be back after that.
Just like we started from nothing.
The hour station this morning with Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, and even as we ask ourselves that question, that prescribed in governments of democracy is that you would have those who are in, the majority, who essentially call the shots, and that those in the minority obviously would take on a position of opposition. That's how it has been practiced over time. But Kenya is interesting because you've often seen that there has been a handshake between the minority and the majority. It has happened, and now we see another happening. And so many Kenyans would ask, okay, so then who's going to check excesses for us? Who's going to insist that certain things be done a certain way? But it seems as though Kenyans have said, okay, well, then how about us? Would we be looking at a different political dispensation where Kenyans say, well, it's okay, we, the majority of the people who are sovereign, will sit in a position of opposition?
Can I chime in, if
Please.
I may? The odd thing about this country we refer to as Kenya is that we did witness a coalition or a handshake where the coalition was actually checking each other. That was in the Kibaki government. It was a very uneasy marriage in many ways. There was a prime minister, there was a president, and there was a lot of back and forth before they arrived at an even ground. Yet, one saw a lot of forward movement in the country, despite those. Because from what I observed, if one side did something that the other one didn't like, they highlighted it before anybody else.
Yes.
If one side did something else, the other side highlighted it. So it was actually quite interesting to observe that the government was checking itself as a coalition. What we are talking about now is something different. So if we were to say that Kenyans came about with a solution that is unique, it is so. But the uniqueness of this minority and majority is the real check comes in if those whose candidate lost the presidency are a majority in parliament, then the check and balance becomes interesting. And I think UDA understood this. And having understood it, they were not going to risk a situation where you have a parliament where the so-called grouping, the coalition that actually lost the presidency, are a majority. How would you move anything?
And as well, during the Kibaki time, why that check and balance was working very well was because everything that was happening, any decisions made, was supposed to be in consultation with the other side. Where if that failed, hence why the antennas were always high. But in 2022, those who lost the election, majority in the National Assembly.
I'm happy listening because I was part of that government of Kibaki.
It is why I brought it up. Yes.
I tell you, it was very nice working in that government. Parliament was parliament.
Yes.
It is that was when you would bring a motion of censure on any of those cabinet. And the parliament was able to oversight the executive properly.
Yes.
But then you also had quality members of parliament. That I must say without fear of ever. It was, we were able to, remember it was also the time we were able to negotiate the constitution.
Yes, yes.
And it was not an easy thing.
No.
That parliament is a parliament that had Anyang'o, Orengo, Martha Karua, Kiraito Murungi, Mwai Kibaki was a member of parliament, Raila was a member of parliament, Munya was a member. We were all there. That's how we were picked, a few of us, to go and sit and make the constitution. And some of the things you're talking about, the nature of checking the government, you can trace them back to those discussions, and perhaps the parliament that you have talked about. And but you see, if then we are saying that the system that we are in seems not to be working, it is only fair that we walk out of it with clarity, not with
emotions,
and not when Kenyans see you like a person who is just out for self-preservation. And I know there are many people who don't like hearing the term BBI, but BBI had addressed all these shortcomings. All these shortcomings were addressed. And there was the realization that the form of government that we got into is not serving Kenyans well.
Yeah.
So, but the people who fought it, led by William Ruto and Gachagua, are now the ones who are, and they also could see that it was not working. So it's that level of dishonesty that is irritating to many of us. This thing needed to have been fixed.
Yes, and it could have been fixed.
And it could have been fixed. In fact, we went all the way to fixing it. Because other than the fact that the Supreme Court again threw in the spanner into the works, would have sorted out this issue. Because what were we saying? It is important to bring back the leader of official opposition into parliament so that there is oversight within the floor.
Yes.
And then the oversight affects the legislative process. But the oversight that is now left is that one with minority and majority members of parliament who are junior to the leaders of the party. And the leaders of the party are the ones outside. That is what has happened. So what has happened is the arena of political activity shifted from parliament to outside some places. Sometimes without even residences. It's happening in people's bedrooms. Because, you do not know when Raila meets Ruto, when, these meetings are the ones that are actually shaping the political narrative in the country and the opposition.
Yeah.
And they are completely outside any known constitutional or legal framework. And that's why we were saying under the BBI, let's take back this to Parliament. And in any case, it is from Parliament that then you are able to, one, oversight, but history had shown us that those who had been leaders of official opposition and had, proved themselves capable became the leaders of the next government. You can see, go through it, you see Kibaki, you see Uhuru, but whenever you decamp from being the leader of opposition, you ended up being in opposition again. And that has been a journey Raila has had for the longest time I have known him. And it is something that we need to address ourselves to. But there is what is a little uncomfortable in the things that are happening now is, one, Kenyans are feeling betrayed because they have pushed to the point of saying we need opposition in this country and we need it proper and we have you people with us. So when they have come to do what you are supposed to have been doing, and then you decamp and go and strengthen the weaker side of the governance, they feel betrayed. Because it's like you are telling them, it's really, it's a slap on their face, and it's not a good one. And I think that is why the former Prime Minister is having difficulties with his background. I have never seen him being heckled in Kisii or such places, and it happened.
It was the first time.
He was also, I know, he was supposed to have been out yesterday with Ruto in Kamkuji and those places. He didn't move. You also can see these other leaders of Nairobi never went to those places from ODM.
Let me ask the question, Mheshimiwa. In 97, was that particular handshake a slap in the face? I'm just going through the chronology.
97.
All of them. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Let's look at all the handshakes. Were they a slap? And if not, what makes this one a slap more than the others? Because
I'll tell you. Let me tell you. In the 97 was the IPPG. It was a negotiated thing by Parliament. The whole institution of Parliament was involved. All political parties were brought on board. They knew what they were going to give birth to, and we needed a credible electoral process. We gave birth to the ECK.
Yes.
In those days, I think
Electoral Commission of Kenya.
and they gave us a credible elections 2002.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I did.
There was a marriage in between, I think, 2002 also.
An MOU.
An MOU that again was supposed to give us constitution. But
it didn't
midway,
MOU.
the MOU was never...
It didn't MOU.
Yes, it didn't MOU. That one collapsed.
Yes.
But it collapsed on the basis that they could not agree on how to handle the constitution.
Yes.
Come to 2007. 2007, that was not a handshake.
No.
It was a national accord.
Yes. With
Government.
International players for external.
Even forget about the international players because they were told off by Kibaki. I remember he came and told them, what is this you think you can tell us to do and you have not done? He told the lady who came, write the speech you want me to read to Kenyans. Order it. Put all the points you think I should put there. And she put. And Kibaki picked it and led it to Kenyans. She left. She said, he went saying, huyu mzee hana shida. Because there was very little done by the international community. That's my point. It was a realization by us Kenyans that we needed to do something differently. So we got into a national accord, and you must credit the people who decided to reduce it into an act of parliament. Which then provided on how do you manage, what's the relationship, and that national accord was also negotiated, and again brought to the institution of Parliament. So we were all informed and involved in the crafting of that national accord. We knew what kind of a relationship are we getting into. Yes? Come to 2020. When is this that we had another one? It's 2017. 2017.
Handshake.
Was there something between 2013 and 2017?
No.
Well, I mean, if we look at 2013 and then going into 2017, now 2017 is when you had the
2017.
rerun of the election.
Yes.
And then after that,
You had Uhuru Kenyatta and
Is when we
Raila
had
Odinga shaking hands.
Yes.
And you remember
and that's
on
when the dynasty
2018
became
or whatever,
alive. Yes.
the issue, that's where they picked the issue of dynasty. But remember 2018, it was a handshake of agreeing on, it is agreeing how are we going to work, government and opposition.
Yes.
Very different from what we have today. Because today, it is not working how to work with the government, but you coming into government.
And let us work together.
Not even working together. You come into government and let us be part of government, because you have your people, you have an agreement, and you have your whole team in government. Remember, and Uhuru has always tried to clarify this to us. The thing they did with the Laira 2018 was to agree for the country to move, you in opposition, us in government. These are the things we need to address to avoid a recurrence of 2017 and the issues that we have seen. What are the issues that you in opposition, us in government, need to do? And that's how they came up with the BBI point.
But remember agenda. What we're seeing
and
now.
He also told us this. He told Tinga, I have already formed government. I cannot sack anybody to bring another person into government. What we are now seeing are people being removed so that ODM can be accommodated in government.
Yes.
So it's very different.
But if you look at the time after the 2002 election, when Raila decamped, during that movement, this is the first time we actually saw a president taking in people who had been in the other camp, and Raila's camp, into the government.
2002.
We did not have the constitution that we have now.
We didn't have 2010 constitution.
But we saw that.
Yes.
Now, I'm simply saying, this is the point I was raising, and I thank you for the clarity, so that our listeners can actually understand these processes. When we look at the processes, devoid even of the constitution and what is required constitutionally, we are seeing activities that may have been seen before. Circumstances have changed drastically. Arguably, at each stage, the argument has been, we would like the country to move forward better. That seems to be a common thread. The narrative now is not different. Narrative that what you're seeing is an attempt to make the country move forward. Now, therein lies the question. How will the country move forward with this construction?
Let me also start with the word how. How I wish Baba, Raila Amolo Odinga used the institutions that were already in place to get us to move forward. How I wish he was carrying the whole of Azimio into this negotiation and not just take up one party and start negotiating it alone. Let me say this. That would have been very important, because that's what has happened all along. How I wish William Ruto had the respect for multi-party democracy and multi-party, the parties that constituted that coalition, and engaged all of them, so that we say we are now headed to stagnation as a country.
Why? What
we have a case. We have a case. Just a minute.
It would seem. Sorry. It would seem as though you believe as though this is something that is for the interest of everyone outside of Raila Odinga. For you to make that wish, then there seems to be the desire or the thinking in your mind that this is actually for something more than the person of Raila Odinga and those who are close to him.
You see, remember the preamble or the things precedent that needed to be done before NADCO happened. Cost of living, we can talk about the server, you can talk about the economy, the death of the people. There are those things that must be done for you to get into agreement. Those are things that are being avoided. That is one of the reasons why I think the shortcut. Because the person inviting in the name of the president is not keen on fulfilling the issues Kenyans are. Remember, this presents you in the opposition with a golden opportunity to push your agenda to be performed by government. When you are getting into that agreement, you can come and say, for us to get in, X, Y, Z must be done. For us to get in, we must do away with this housing thing. We must do away with this CHA thing. We must ensure that the help is back to help the university student. We seem to have lost on that. The NADCO report, not NADCO, the National Accord, for Raila to come in as a prime minister, there were things that were put in the constitution, in the act. And one of them was to ensure that we have a constitution in place. Now we are in without really just, I think, Baba has, and you know Baba is Baba. So what he has done is, he says Baba is Baba. So what he has done is, perhaps because of the numbers that he has in Parliament, he has decided to go this journey alone. But he has also not realized that the people he was leading in the 90s and in the early 2000s are not these ones. These are people who have led the constitution. They understand what you stand for. They understand what is majority, what is minority, the laws, and even the shortcomings that needs to be addressed. And they even have ideas of how they can be addressed. To do anything of that nature in this country, for heaven's sake, do that thing that is called proper public participation. Not the one I saw him doing in Garissa and in other places.
Yeah.
Proper public participation. And also, carry along those whom you are with.
Yet, Kioni, even as we speak, there is the aspect of Kenyans now carrying the mantle of being the opposition. And clearly, yes, they have changed. But what is the alternative? Because one would say, while Kioni and group appear to be the opposition, but you are working with Rigathi Gachagua, who Kenyans feel as though the problems that we face today is because he's part of the government and decisions were made when he was there. Why would anyone worth their salt sit today and trust that you are the saviors?
May I add something that
Yes,
you said?
please.
Yes, because if indeed it is being said that you work with the immediate former deputy president, the question I want to ask is if that is the case, of course. If it isn't, then of course my question is completely irrelevant. But if that's the case, are there things that you would consider sensitive and private that you discuss with him? Because from everything I have seen, things that I would have thought would not be said in public about the work he did and what they said and with whom they said it, he seems to delight in letting the public know some of these things which I would have assumed were supposed to be confidential.
And Kioni actually calls him the good soldier to send to the battlefield.
But let me tell you, I see where you are
Your
trying
thoughts,
to.
yeah.
Now you are now laying the traps. You are-
Without announcing them ahead of time.
But I think before we come from the other, the thing that we need to understand and ask ourselves is this arrangement that now ODM and UDA have gotten into, which is really a coalition. You are talking about me being alone. I can tell you, for all practical purposes, they are not in Azimio. They have signed another agreement, but without having exited.
Is an MOU
Azimio.
an agreement?
It is when you get into working with the government of the day, while we have a coalition that is against the government, not against in the manner of fighting it, but opposite of.
So
the
you're talking
government
about
of
the
day.
spirit of the understanding.
It is certainly something that you
But
can
is
argue in court.
it an illegality?
I think it is an illegality, and I hold it that it is a legality in this manner. But we need to ask ourselves: ODM has taken over all those committees in Parliament that are supposed to be held by the party in power. Health, budget,
Energy.
departmental committees that are supposed to be held by the party in power have been transferred to ODM. That means ODM is in power. So as you read the MOU, you have also to bring in.
Can I also
the
read and
things
say that since ODM has not officially exited from Azimio, you could say a member of Azimio is holding the brief for Azimio, and their party is actually holding these positions. I mean, for purposes of argument.
And then can I also say, for purposes of argument, that clearly there looks like there is ODM A and ODM B. And ODM A is the one that is causing this confusion within the opposition ranks.
Yes.
And it is why we have to continue debating these issues back and forth. Unfortunately, they are being engineered by those whom we I still think, need to give better leadership so that you have better governance. And you'll also ask yourself, as I will come to the question you have asked, we have the Public Accounts Committee, PIC committee, that are supposed to be held by the opposition. ODM is in government, and they are still holding into these positions. these confusions, these are some of the issues that needed to have been dealt with. But allow me to say
really quickly,
very quickly.
Yes,
I have personally have not worked with Gachagua. Jubilee has not worked with Gachagua, and you can go through the record. The question you posed will be a good question to be answered by Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa.
We'll be sure to ask them those questions when we have them.
But I also wish to, it's not an easy time. He has jumped into the opposition. He seems to have Kenyans seems to enjoy the way he wants to bring William down.
Yes.
Remember we were saying Kufa dereva Kufa Makanga. He seems to have the answer to Kufa dereva because Makanga amekufa. But what is important for Kenyans?
Really quickly.
And be careful. Impeachment is for life. And it has already happened. It happens in the Senate, not in the courts, in the Senate.
And it has happened.
And Senate concluded the impeachment on the former deputy president.
Secretary,
and unfortunately for him, he didn't, if I were him, ningechezea ndani mpaka nimalize miaka 2 na nusu.
There's a note to end on, and there we have to. Secretary General for Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, has been our guest this hour, dropping some things that would be interesting to keep following on, and that's why this discourse is absolutely important. Thank you for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Asante sana. Good morning. It's 9:01.